Lovely to see so many of you here this evening, despite the weather. I'm Julie Sanders, I'm the Vice-Chancellor and Principal here at Royal Holloway. I'm going to very, very briefly set the context of this event and why we're holding it this week, which is because it's actually the launch of our new RH2030s strategy. And there's lots of lovely events taking place here in Egham and also at our London campus. And we thought it'd be lovely to have our brilliant alumni involved in that because they've been so important both in the creation of the strategy but will also be very vital in taking it forward. The strategy's been co-created over about 18 months. It means a very great deal to me, so it's rather lovely to see it out in the world, if a bit shocking sometimes because it's in very large font everywhere I go. You will see that we are very much majoring on being a university of social purpose, and of course on this very building you will see the 4 values of being open and respectful and daring and innovative. If you ever need to remind yourself, please pop out and have a look. Our 4 strategic ambitions are to foster inclusive education and research, skills for choice and opportunity, to be civic-minded and globally engaged, and to foster partnerships and collaborations. And I think one of the key partnerships is always with our amazing graduates. We've got some great role models here, inspirations for current students. And I've seen that value of our graduates, of our alumni writ large lately with events here in Egham. We had 200 plus here on the weekend of the Heritage Open Day. We marked the 175th of Bedford College, and very recently Gemma Marenghi and I have been in Beijing and Shanghai, and it was very moving to see the love and the friendship felt for Royal Holloway by all concerned. And our lovely panel this evening, both in person and online, is the perfect example of that partnership and collaboration. The event is going to be hosted and chaired by graduate but also honorary fellow Bobby Seagull, also prime bus catcher if you've been looking at his LinkedIn this evening, maths teacher, broadcaster extraordinaire, serious Strictly fan, it has to be said, BSc Economics and Maths 2007. And on his brilliant panel, we also have Sandra Anani, MBA International Business 2006, with an amazing track record in business for sustainability and corporate governance. And I'm really proud that environmental sustainability is one of our 3 strategic enablers for RH2030s, so we've got a lot to talk about. And Simon Slayen, BSc Drama and German 2009, MA in Research in Theatre 2010, now Senior Curator of Modern Contemporary Theatre and Performance at the Victorian Albert, but of course also curator of the Ivan Kinchel exhibition, which is in our Emily Wilding exhibition space down below, and there's an event following which I urge you all to join, and a wonderful example it is of one of our areas of strength, which is culture and creativity. You can see how this is all flowing. And online tonight we've got Denola Oladapo at BSc Economics 2016, hugely successful in Morgan Stanley, but also a massive champion of inclusive education. And Pavithra Bger, PhD Computer Science 2022, a data scientist at Moorfields Eye Hospital NHS Trust. And again, one of our areas of strength is health and well-being. So other than to say that our alumni are all vital to the success of Royal Holloway and to the success of RH2030s, do please, everyone on the panel, feel that you are ambassadors for Royal Holloway and the vision and values going forward, and do continue to let us know how you want to be engaged. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Bobby, who's going to dance forward for the panel, and I'm going to melt back into the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie, for the introduction. So this weekend I was at the live recordings, and I was actually wearing, it was movie week, so I was wearing I always like to try and theme, you can tell I like themed outfits. Today I'm wearing a Royal Holloway coloured jacket and shirt, and the weekend I was wearing, so it was a movie themed week, so I was wearing a yellow suit after a 1994 Jim Carrey film. Anyone know the film? The Mask, yes, I was, didn't have the mask itself, but that was my outfit. So it's a real delight to be back at Royal Holloway. In fact, on the way here, I got off at the station at Egham as I usually do. And I thought, oh, I'm going to quickly get an Uber. And I saw some students getting off, heading towards the left direction. Like, where are they heading off towards? I'm kind of a curious person, so I just followed them for 15 seconds. I didn't want to get called a stalker. I was like, oh, where are they going? And then I saw they were getting on a campus bus. So I got on first, and then I stood and smiled at the driver, and the driver was smiling back at me. And he was like, smiling like, you got to pay. I'm like, oh, pay. So I got out my credit card and tapped. And I was curious, everyone else used their phones to pay. And that's the moment I realized I've officially transitioned to being a real adult, because I don't do the things that the youngsters do anymore. So the last time actually I was here was for my honorary fellowship event. So there was an event this year. And the year before, when I got my honorary fellowship, was actually one of the most special evenings of my life for two reasons. One is I got the fellowship. But the second thing is, equally as important, I'm from East Ham, and my football club, West Ham, they won the European Conference League, their first trophy for 43 years, and I missed that to be here. Although, when I got the train back to Waterloo, West Ham scored the winning goal as we got through to the station, so good timing. So for this evening, as a teacher, I'm going to give you the schedule of events. Although there's no detentions, no warnings. Normally in school, I give them 2 warnings on the board in detention, but I'm not expecting any of that today. So we're going to do 5 minutes on each person doing their individual stories. And again, you get to hear about how diverse their different experiences were. And then we'll open it up for a panel discussion with the 4 of us. And then finally some Q&A where you can become Jeremy Paxman or Laura Koonsberg or whatever, sort of a nice version of Question Masters to them. Anyone use social media here? Any social media users here? So again, whether it's X or LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or Threads or TikTok or Pinterest, there's so many. Please feel free to tag Royal Holloway or myself, anyone, during the course of the event. So I'm going to start off with my individual story. So what we're going to get everyone to do is talk about their journey and their career path. And the theme is Together for What Matters, looking at how our passions have made an impact. And again, when I walked into the campus, I actually saw the innovative, daring, respectful, open. And I can almost imagine, this is like showing my age a bit, anyone remember the Power Rangers? Maybe the new students don't know, but I can imagine them coming out going, innovative, daring. So like, I imagine that in my head. So I'm already excited about these new values that we have. So I'm going to share my story for the next 5 minutes, which as a mathematician, was it 5 times 60, 300 seconds, plus or minus 10%. You always give yourself a bit of leeway. So this is Bobby, aged 8 or 9. So Bobby, I'm speaking myself in the third person, that's Bobby, you see. So young Bobby there was very curious. That's the thing. In fact, people used to call him, or me, why Bobby, why? Because I would always say why to things. So curiosity has been something that's been important to me for a long time. So this is back in 2000. Anyone recognize the chap on the second left? Second left. He had a bit more hair than he does now. Tony Blair, yeah. So he came to visit. I was at a state school in East London called St Bonaventure's, and we in fact had Sir Michael Wilshire, who ended up being a controversial head of Ofsted, but we had Tony Blair visit my state school, and again, my state school was a very good state school in a challenging area. And then when I was 16, I had a totally different experience. I went from an East London council estate, and I got a scholarship to Eton College. And you can imagine going from a council estate in East London to Eton. I remember my first day I turned up at Eton. In my state school, the cool kids were like Adidas, Reebok, Nike, Kappa. So I turned out looking like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I learned to moderate my style later on, but it sort of opened my eyes in terms of education opportunity and also disadvantages throughout the country, which is why I've always been passionate about trying to level the playing field. Then I went on to start doing Maths at Oxford, but I didn't finish there. I made a decision to come to Royal Holloway in my second year. Can you see I had in fact, I used to have longer hair, then I cut it to short hair, then it's gone back to longer hair. Now I'm back in my medium hair phase. So that's me, I think, for one of the college prospectuses, and then me on my graduation day. But what my education journey taught me was how important it is to upskill yourself. Because obviously, we all have different opportunities. We're all born in different backgrounds. But education is a real chance to give yourself the opportunity to make the impact that you want to do. So actually, after Royal Holloway, my first career was in the city. So I worked for a little-known bank called Lehman Brothers. It wasn't my fault. I was actually a trader there. Unfortunately, in 2008, September the 15th, they did collapse, which taught me a lot about resilience. That was my desk, lots of screens, trading money. Felt like a video game, but it actually was real life. Then I actually moved on to PwC, and I qualified as a chartered accountant. And my Indian parents were very proud. I'll tell you why. Indian parents have a pecking order of professions. Number one is always doctor. So I didn't quite get that. Then second is probably lawyer, then engineer. Accountant, sort of like bronze medal contention, but it's close enough, so my parents are very happy. But when I was 30, I took a sabbatical and taught graduates at PwC. And I loved this so much, I decided to change careers at 30 to become a teacher, Mr. Seagull. So I went to Cambridge, did my teacher training, became a teacher, head of department in East London, and then the unexpected change, which again can happen to our careers. I was captain of my Cambridge team on University Challenge, and I enjoyed the experience, but I ended up going viral on social media many times for being like a very happy person. I remember I'd go back to school the next day and my students would say, "Sir, did you see you were trending on Twitter?" or as it was called then. And then from there, I sort of had an unexpected media career where the BBC gave me my own TV show, and I sort of continued television and education since then. And again, when we talk about like what's our mission, raison d'etre, maybe in my 20s, I wasn't quite sure. It was probably, make money, support my family, whereas now I've got a very clear mission. It's to make people, I was going to say enjoy maths, maybe dislike it not as much. I can moderate that. I need to adjust that. I think when I first did this talk, it was like, make people love maths. I realized to moderate that. So I do lots of puzzles for the BBC. I write for newspapers about mathematics, and I publish various books. And even like I went on the It Takes Two Strictly panel, and I wore any mathematicians here? Anyone recognize what that square root of -1 means? Yeah. So I wore a shirt that said, "I love maths and Strictly." I remember I was explaining to the panelists what it meant, and they were all like nodding, going, "Okay, imaginary numbers, what's going on here?" But I always try and use any platform I have to share my love for maths. And I was a fugitive on a Channel 4 reality show. But most recently, I took part in Indian Matchmaking on Netflix, a dating show. I remember I knocked on my head teacher's door, because normally I've got to get permission from them before I do any programs. I was like, "Mr. Head Teacher, can I do this? I've got another show to do." And he's like, "Oh, fine. Bobby, we know you're responsible. What show is this?" So it's a dating show. And he's like, "What? You're not doing Love Island?" I'm like, No, it's not Love Island. It's Indian Matchmaking, but I've got a favor to ask. Can I film some of my lessons? So I ended up filming some of my maths lessons on a dating show. So for me, I'm really privileged that I still teach in a class, but do media work, but I always try and link it back to my mission, always try and get in maths. So you're lucky today I've not asked you any maths questions so far. Okay, so we're going to now get the panel to share their individual stories. So I'm going to start off with Sandra.
Well, I've got a really tough act to follow, but I'll do my best. So I'm Sandra Anani. I started my career, I like to think, while I was at uni, a bit ahead of everyone else. I started baking cakes and selling them for extra pocket money. I kind of thought that was really fun. I love cooking and I love how it brings joy to people. So I thought that was a really good way to earn extra money, but also bring joy to people around me that I care about. When I finished uni, I started my career in aviation. A lot of people in my family worked in aviation, and it's something I'm very passionate about. I'm a firm believer that aviation is the closest that humanity will ever get to time travel. When you think how much impact aviation has had on every single one of us, every one of us, I'm willing to wager, has been on a plane. And some of those trips have been instrumental for our life, for our quality of life, for our families, and for economic drivers as well. So I think my passion for aviation hopefully is coming through a little bit, but I'm a firm believer that we need to protect aviation. While I was working within aviation, I wanted to learn all about it as a business. I worked in sales, I worked in operations, I was a dispatcher, I tried everything, and I loved it. The more I learned, the more I loved it. I don't know if you know this fact, but an airplane seat is the most perishable item of goods that exists, because once that plane departs, that seat's gone forever. You can't pickle it, you can't freeze it, you can't, recycle it, it's gone. So it just gives you another thought about how important aviation is, and how much of an impact it has in our lives, and how important it is to protect. So whilst I was working in aviation, I worked for airlines, I worked for airport operators. So I've got, again, different perspectives of aviation and how completely different they really are. But then I met Royal Holloway. So I wanted to do my master's degree. And I approached my manager. I worked at BAA at the time, so it was called BAA, it's Heathrow now. And when I started thinking about it and researching the unis, I fell in love with Royal Holloway. And I thought, I really want to come to Royal Holloway. So I spoke to my manager at the time, and she said, "Okay, well, why don't we sponsor you and we'll put you to the uni we choose?" And I was like, "No, I don't want to go to your uni, thank you very much." But luckily, I was able to negotiate with her so I can have some time off to come to attend classes. And I did it part-time over 2 years, and it transformed my life, and I'll tell you why. Within these hallowed grounds, I came to my first lecture on business ethics and CSR. And the question I was asked by the professor, all of us in the class, was, imagine you've just graduated your MBA and you have the dream job offer, your ultimate dream, everything, the office you want, the package you want, the country you want, everything. That company manufactures landmines. Would you take that job? And a huge discussion erupted in the class. And I started arguing with people around me. I'm like, no, I wouldn't. How could you take such a job? You know. And of course, the professor let us have this little discussion for a minute, and then he stopped us. And that transformed my life. I knew at that moment that this was my real passion now. Business ethics, CSR, corporate governance, sustainability, because that's the only way we can identify what really matters for us, what aligns to our values, to our passions, what drives us, what makes you get up in the morning and go, I want to do today, I'm taking this on, you know? So anyway, needless to say, that was my favorite topic at Royal Holloway, and I credit you, Royal Holloway, all the time, wherever I go, and I say, this is where it started for me with sustainability. So soon after that, I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to work for Abu Dhabi Airports, where they allowed me to help them create their business strategy around sustainability and stakeholder engagement, working with the community, working with partners, building relationships, working with people like Etihad Airways, that I'm sure everybody knows. Again, aviation is always somewhere lurking in the background. But yeah, so it allowed me to do all of that and to really get stuck into not only the academic and the learning and the theories, but actually getting it done. How difficult it is to make these things come from a concept paper to realizing it into real life, and how many people you have to work with. From there on, I then decided that I wanted to do this with different sectors, not just aviation. So I set up my own business. This is where a little bit of my passion for food that I mentioned earlier comes back, because throughout my life, I've traveled a lot. I've been very privileged. I've been on so many planes, as I'm sure you have all. I don't want to know my carbon footprint, really. I don't want to go there. But what I do want to say is, having traveled around the world, I met wonderful people and ate delicious meals, and I actually collected their recipes. And then when COVID happened, I decided I was going to pull all of these recipes together and make a cookbook on sustainable living and using recipes every day from seasonal, locally sourced products and vegetarian. It's vegetarian/vegan. So essentially, where I am now in my career is I am running my own business. I have been for the past 12 years. It has brought me a lot of experience and expertise and respect for the people that I work with, whether they are clients or colleagues or just interested parties and stakeholders. It also is very humbling when you see people actually take on board what you say and try to work it through, because it's not easy. Some of the things that we all do in our everyday jobs are not the easiest of things, and sometimes the most magical moment is when you see that light coming on. That moment when someone gets it finally. They might not get it from the first meeting, second, or even the 10th. But if you keep going at it, and that's my key message here, keep going, never give up. So I don't know if I've used up all my 5 minutes, but that's really what I wanted to share with you today. If you have any questions, please fire away. Obviously, I work with a lot of clients, mainly out in Abu Dhabi. That's where my company is based. But we've worked across with Kuwait, Doha, Saudi, been to Saudi as well, which is quite an adventure. But if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you. Hand over to Bobby.
Thank you so much, Sandra. And again, I love the variety of your career in terms of you had the aviation focus, and then you came here, and then you got that sort of drive to think about business ethics, CSR, and that sustainability pivot, and that conversation you had about landmines making you really think differently about your career. And also I love the fact that you ended up writing a cookbook, a woman of many talents. And that concept about a light bulb coming on. And again, as a teacher and educator, I always think people that pass on knowledge and skills, sometimes you're teaching someone, so you've got a trainee and they're not quite getting it. But when that light bulb comes on, that's a really special moment. Okay, so now we are going to our virtual link up. So it's almost like, like Eurovision, they're like, we get the scores from. So now we got we're going to Pallavi for her story now. Can you hear me, Pallavi?
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for giving me this wonderful opportunity to share my journey on this platform. I am grateful to be here and to reflect on how my path has evolved over the years. We have just heard like two inspiring and interesting stories. Now let me take you back to the beginning of my story when I was a kid and people asked what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I would say with all the seriousness a child could muster, I want to be a doctor. I envision myself wearing a white coat and holding a stethoscope, definitely not sitting in front of a computer screen. But as I grew older, I realized that biology wasn't for me. The memorization of complex medical terminologies and the thought of giving injections were daunting. So my journey took a turn towards mathematics. And eventually I landed in engineering. I was born and raised in India, where I completed my BTech in computer science and engineering and secured a college placement. However, my parents encouraged me to pursue higher studies, so I enrolled into an MTech program. So now here you can relate when Bobby mentioned Indian parents. During my master's, I became increasingly interested in research. And after graduation, when many of my friends they dove straight into job applications, I decided to explore the path of research and started applying for PhD programs. I was fortunate to secure a fully funded scholarship at Royal Holloway University under the guidance of Professor Kostas Stathis, who made all these things possible from the Department of Computer Science, and he played a key role in making my transition from India to the UK a smooth one. This was 7 years ago. So initially, I thought a PhD would lead me to teaching, as I had always been the go-to tutor among my friends during the exam time, the most pressure time. But life had more surprises in store. My PhD journey opened my eyes to a different path, transitioning to industry, where I could use my passion for AI to make a tangible difference. Just as I was exploring postdoctorate opportunities, I came across a position with the NHS. Despite having no prior experience with medical images, I took a leap of faith and joined Bart's Hospital in London, where I collaborated with cardiologists to integrate AI with cardiac imaging. I worked on the project of automating cardiac MRI planning process with the help of machine learning algorithms. So that pivotal year was crucial as it bridged my past streams with my current reality, leading me to where I stand today as a data scientist at Moorfields Eye Hospital, London. So here I work with ophthalmologists on cutting-edge AI techniques to transform patient care. So we are working on projects like eye-to-gene and geographic atrophy, which allow me to contribute to the future of retinal healthcare, combining technology and medicine in ways I never imagined. So in the eye-to-gene project, we use AI on different retinal scans to predict which inherited retinal disease a patient has, and specifically which gene is likely to be affected. Once it is validated, clinicians can use this information to make informed decisions about patient care. In the second project, geographic atrophy, we work with a disease that affects people's central vision. We use AI to assess the impact of various drugs on the disease progression. We are trying to reduce the progression time because we don't have treatment as of now for this particular disease. So here I am, not the medical doctor once I dreamed of being, but a doctor nonetheless, a PhD and a data scientist using AI to impact patient lives. This journey has taught me that while our paths might twist and turn with passion, perseverance, and collaboration, we can make a meaningful impact on the world. Together for what matters, we can achieve things we never imagined. Thank you so much for having me here. If you have any questions, just let me know at the end of the discussion. We can catch up. Thank you so much for hearing my story.
Thank you, Pallavi. Again, I love the idea of like you have, when we're all children, we have childhood dreams. Mine at one stage was to be a spaceman or a chess player. They sort of dissipated. But again, you wanted to be a doctor, and then sometimes, we've got these dreams, and then we try and change and adapt based on what we've seen. And I love that concept of that leap of faith you did when you moved to Barts, London. And then suddenly you're now working in retinal healthcare with tech and medicine and AI, and again, that's going to impact so many fields. So thank you for sharing your story. Now we're going to go on to Simon. I'm going to welcome him to the stage.
Thank you. Deadly silence, dramatic pause. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm Simon, Senior Curator of Modern and Contemporary Theatre and Performance. But as everyone's sharing their what I wanted to be when I grew up story, I'm going to indulge you all. I wanted to be the Fat Controller in Thomas the Tank Engine. So obviously from a very young age, I could imagine, A, what that would be like, and B, that notion of dressing up. This Friday, just gone, I actually achieved almost that. The Watercress line, which is a heritage line for trains, I was going to be driving a different train. That failed its engineering certificate, and so the one they used for Thomas was the one I got to drive. So that was a wonderful moment, and that was part of my birthday, so very nice. Anyway, back to family. I'm going to start with a big up to my grandma, who lived just down the road in Camberley. Every Christmas, she'd take all the grandchildren to Woking to see the Panto. And for many, many people in the UK, the Panto is the first time that they'll experience theatre, maybe come together with their family, and it hooks them for life, as it did me. That started a whole tradition of going to the Panto, performing in plays, doing Amdram, and brought me to GCSE drama, A-level drama, as well as design technology, German, art. And those things are important, thinking of where I am now at the V&A National Museum for Art, Design and Performance. But I didn't know that at the time. Those in turn, of course, led me to come here to Royal Holloway, where I studied my BA in drama and German. And in my final year, I was doing a course on theatre criticism, and it was Christmas, and we could choose what to see and write about. And our wonderful lecturer, Karen Fricker, said, oh, it's only Panto on at the moment, so I don't know what you're going to be able to write about that. And I thought, wait a second, there's, now I know there are 280 pantomimes that happen at Christmas across the country, multi-million pound industry, hundreds of thousands of millions of people seeing it, an integral part of British culture. But nowhere really had those stats or that information. And so I then did my dissertation looking at casting traditions and that notion of tradition and Britishness. And that led me to want to dig deeper into this wonderful world. Where are the sources of history? Why is it that at that point there was very little, if nothing, written academically on the subject of something that we all know so well? So this is the first thing that comes back time and time in my career. You've got to do it yourself if it's not there. Do it yourself. So that was my passion, and some might say that's my little niche area of theatre. And I wanted to go further, so I started a PhD, and I was lucky enough to teach here at Holloway as well. But I needed resources, I needed statistics, I needed material. There was no archive, there was none of that. So I turned to social media, Twitter, and got in contact with those 360 theatres and established National Panto Day, a day in December where the whole community comes together to celebrate what happens, the craft, the skill, the expertise, those traditions. Also, lots of anecdote around. Pantos used to run till Easter, we used to do 8 shows a day, all that rubbish. Where is the actual facts? Where are the facts? So I established the national database of pantomime performance, and that was a way of me capturing data to inform my studies, but also had a wider industry use. It's now used for casting, to see where people have been, to see what titles have been in areas. So again, do it yourself. Whilst I was here, there was a conference, a big research project called The Making of the West End Theatre, and I was employed as the conference administrator. I presented a paper about Panto in the West End, and I also luckily was invited to have that published. That was interesting because that was the first time to really platform this area of research and my, I suppose, profile. There were 2 partners on that project, as well as Royal Holloway. One was the Theatre Royal Haymarket, and the other was the Victoria and Albert Museum. And through that, really, it got me thinking about history, the custodianship of history, objects, archives, how we tell those stories, and why the hell did the V&A not have more stuff on Panto that would help me? That would have been really helpful. I then was lucky enough to get a part-time job as a cataloguer, cataloguing 100 things a day. They could have been engravings, playbills, costumes. And that was sneaky of me because it meant I got to know the collection even better and what was not on the catalogue, what was in those boxes that people don't get to see. And that's another area that I still do cataloguing today, but that notion of access, engagement, and who gets to see this stuff, whose story, very, very important to all I do. So I had my foot in the door, and I've been at the V&A since 2012, 8 years of those as a senior curator. So I'm just going to speak about a couple of projects which are really dear to my heart. The first is Laughing Matters, The State of a Nation, which is the museum's first ever gallery dedicated to comedy. But it looks at the last 100 years of history through the lens of comedy. The history of Britain and its peoples, its challenging accepted histories, it confronts aspects such as racism, misogyny, homophobia, but in an engaging way. And it's the first time the museum actually wrote on a text panel and acknowledged the role of empire in its founding and its collecting policy. A lot of the material in that, of course, it's about comedy, it's about my area, and that's also led to other exciting projects like working with Blackpool Council on their brand new museum that opened this year, Showtown, celebrating the history, the heritage of Blackpool. Absolutely significant for not only Blackpool and the UK, but global entertainment history and heritage. So again, my work is about respecting those genres that often go belittled or unknown or don't get captured because they're oral histories, they're not of a literary tradition. Basically, they're not Shakespeare. This has led to me also working with UNESCO on their Intangible Cultural Heritage Register, and lots of opportunities to address the historical record, those hierarchies of culture, those aspects that exist. A recent example, we've just acquired Paul O'Grady's Lily Savage costumes. He's so important in the history of drag, but also in the advocacy and the campaigning he did to improve and advocate for gay rights. So at the moment, I'm using all of that knowledge to have been appointed to co-chair a museum-wide initiative looking at the future of curation. What is curatorial practice? What can it mean? What should it mean? Are we fit for purpose today? And we've just rewritten our curatorial training programme at the V&A, and an industry-wide report will come out soon. We're busy getting ready for the David Bowie Centre for the Study of Performing Arts in our brand new Centre for Research at V&A East. And at the heart of everything I do is these three pillars of access, engagement, and audience, which is very similar to performance itself. All the things always running through. It's a huge responsibility to be part of the UK's National Collection of Performing Arts, and it's also a challenge. But I think everything that you should do should be a challenge, should be challenging, and you need to challenge yourself. So there's my words of wisdom, and thank you, Thomas the Tank Engine and the Fat Controller. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. I'm going to have to get those details of that Thomas the Tank Engine off you afterwards. So I think I love that the sort of that DIY, do-it-yourself idea, because I think, again, looking at our values, being daring, if something's not there, you can either just accept it, or you think, actually, I want to change it. So going in to create that Panto Day and that database, you've always had that sort of daring nature. So thank you very much for sharing that. So now we're going to go on to, last but not least, welcome Denola, and please could you share your story with us?
Thank you so much. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Hello, everyone. Sorry, I've been having connectivity issues, so please do tell me if at any point you lose me. I wish I could be there in person, but hello from Geneva. I've written some notes, so I really will try to stay on time. So I will tell you now how this Nigerian girl who grew up in Luton ended up leading a tech inclusion project at the United Nations in Geneva in less than 5 minutes. So as I said, I was born in Nigeria. And by the way, I really enjoyed hearing all the other speakers. Thank you so much for your inspiration. I was born in Nigeria, moved to the UK when I was 11. And I grew up in Luton in quite challenging conditions. I'm sure you can imagine the whole classic, migrant family story. I was there. And in 2013, I didn't get my predicted A-level grades like many people, but Royal Holloway gave me a chance and I was able to come and study economics. While I was at Royal Holloway, I was ACS president, that's African Caribbean Society president, Black and Ethnic Minority officer at the student union. I was an ESOL volunteer. I was part of many societies and I was very active. And I don't know how I still managed to graduate with a first in 2016. And then I started my career in investment banking and FX sales and trading operations at Morgan Stanley. And then later on, I went on to Goldman Sachs. So within 3 months of me settling into my job and everything, I started to miss all the impact stuff I used to do at Royal Holloway. I was missing, the organizing, the community stuff I was doing. And then I started to explore, the extracurricular things, because when you're in uni, you don't really think of how you will sustain those social things when you get to real life, I guess. So I then applied successfully to join the UK I Will Fund Leadership Board, which then paved the way for me to join, at the time, Prince Charles, but now His Royal Majesty, King Charles, his advisory board on youth issues. So I'd go across the country doing loads of youth social action work, trying to, revive the youth clubs. And these were things I was doing on the side of my extremely busy job. And then after that, that paved the way for me to start representing the UK at international conferences on youth issues and gender issues, such as the Youth G7 Summit. I think I went in Rome in 2017, and then the Girls 20 Summit, which is like the G20 but focused on the rights of girls. That was in Munich. So, and then many of them like that in Lithuania, different countries. And these were, again, things I would take leave from work to do this advocacy work. And then I became the UK coordinator of the Commonwealth Youth Peace Ambassadors Network. And then I shortly started Luton Lights, which is a charity in Luton. I only closed it last year because I had to move to Geneva and focused on my role in the UN. But I ran it for several years, focused on economic empowerment of women and girls in Luton, where I grew up. I wanted the girls growing up in Luton to have a bit of access to what I've been very lucky to experience out of my group of friends in Luton. I'm probably the only one that even went to uni, took less of all the opportunities I've had. So through our charity, we're able to offer workshops on coding and also soft skills like confidence. We'll give them mentorship. We took them on trips to Parliament several times, to places like Facebook, just trying to show them the male-dominated field and show them that we're in Luton, but we're not that far from London, where there are loads of opportunities, and all these things are open to you as well. So again, these were things I was doing on the side of my very busy investment banking job, and that was long hours. Then I started to realize that all these things I was doing for free in my spare time was actually my passion. And I wish I could do that as a job. And then I applied to become a Schwarzman Scholar to study global affairs in China, in Beijing. And I was very successful to get that scholarship. And I wanted to do this so I could pivot from finance into a role in diplomacy and international development. I graduated into a pandemic, started to regret everything. Like, why did I leave a job at Goldman Sachs to go and find myself and to get this dream of working in international development? And then there's no jobs, there's a pandemic, and everyone's at home. Back in Luton to square one. But I didn't have enough time to tell you all the perils of 2020. I'm sure we will have our stories. But I then was able to get a part-time role in a think tank in Finland, in Helsinki. And that was my first role in policy, like real role, not just, going to a conference, but actually having a role in education. After doing that for a while, I was very blessed to then get a job in ITU, which is where I still am. The ITU is the United Nations Organization for Technology. And then I was working in innovation, which then transitioned into what I'm doing now, which is digital inclusion. In a nutshell, what I've been doing for the last 4 years is basically everything to do with the experiences of young people, especially young women online. So the safety of young women online, innovation, and then also young entrepreneurs. So all the policy and program and project work you can imagine that has to do with the experiences of digital technologies and young people is my niche. But of course, I support digital inclusion work broadly, persons living with disabilities, indigenous communities, and so on. How we bring technology in a meaningful way and in a way that actually progresses society and in a co-creative way. So basically, that was very fast, and I know I talk fast anyway. So so hopefully you got a feel of what I've been able to do since Royal Holloway. But my general thing would just be to anyone interested, just advise to aim for the moon, because you may fall among the stars. My goal has always been impact from when I was in high school in Luton and finding out, about Black History Month. I always wanted to do assemblies. And then when I came to Royal Holloway, I was doing ACS, BME. I never knew I would have opportunity to take that even further on the international stage. So you never know where the small things you're passionate about could actually take you. I didn't have slides, so I just do a little bit of show and tell to wrap up. I have like 4 items that I think characterize my career over the time. So I have a little calculator to show my time working in banking, studying economics at Royal Holloway, and all the maths we did. And then I have this book on democracy by Condoleezza Rice that's just talking about my studies I did in China. on global affairs, which I very much enjoyed. And then I worked a little bit in the British Embassy in Beijing. And then I have this, which is a gift I got from one of the young beneficiaries of my program at the UN, a young creator in Mali who we've been supporting in his digital innovation work. And last year I was able to take him to a conference in Qatar to share his work with government. And he brought me this wonderful gift from his country. And then finally, my UN passport, which I've been able to travel across the world with. And every time I look at it, I just remember the fact, where I come from, who I've been able to experience, and my goal to basically push for innovation development for everyone across the world. And I'm so glad that Royal Holloway is part of my story. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you all today. And I wish I could be there. Hopefully I'll see you all soon at some point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denola, for your energy and enthusiasm. You can really feel it across the screen. And I love when you're here at Royal Holloway, you're throwing yourself into all these societies. And now you can see that in your career, you use those skills. Again, making an impact to those young people back in Luton and internationally. So thank you for all the hard work that you do. So we're going to move on to our panel discussion. But as a teacher, I always look for, as a maths teacher, you always try and do dad jokes, and students actually sometimes go and appreciate it. So I think, Sandra, you said at one stage, what makes you get up in the morning? And that's also a profound question, but I was thinking for me, it's my 2 alarm clocks. Yeah. Okay, so I'd like to welcome you to the stage. So what we're now going to do is spend maybe 15, 20 minutes talking about how passion for a field can lead to sort of meaningful impact in various industries, whether it's in education or sustainability, the arts, science and tech, or the charity sector. And at various levels, it can be, for yourself individually, your community, or on a wider scale. And in fact, there's a book that I read, in fact, a couple of times, by an author called Angela Duckworth. Anyone ever heard of Angela Duckworth? So she's a professor at the University of Stanford in America. And she wrote a book. The main title is called Grit. And when you hear the word grit, obviously there'll probably be grit coming out on the roads in the next few months with the weather. But grit is, maybe people say gritty, they're like resilient. But she actually defined it as grit is the power of passion and perseverance. So passion and perseverance. And what she said is actually, when people are successful in life, it's not because of necessarily who they were born to or their academic ability or their test results. Actually, it's about people that are gritty. And so her definition of grit was people that are passionate and persevere. So passionate is when people are deeply engaged in their work. They find it fulfilling, like all our panel will do, and they're driven by a clear sense of purpose. But more than that, they've got that perseverance to apply that for months, for years, for decades. And that's what really makes an impact. So we're going to first start off with looking at passion as a driver for success. So this question here, I'm going to throw to Simon and Denola, but obviously the other members can answer as well. So I'll start with you, Simon. So how has passion, I can clearly sense that enthusiasm. Again, your dramatic skills always come through. How has it helped drive your career path?
I think it's helpful to think about, often, and we teach an MA with the Royal College of Art and also do a lot of outreach stuff, and kids always are talking about this is the job I want to do and this is all of that. And I say to them, actually, what is your passion? Because for me, I never thought of museum work as something that even existed or I knew about. Actually, interestingly, I always thought I'd go into teaching. But even everything I've done has been related to theatre performance in some way, and there's always been a lot of learning, and that might be from, actually, I worked in the music library here whilst I was at Holloway, and that added more passion and interest and learning and knowledge. And I think that ability to be open and to understand that there are lots of avenues which can intersect with your passion, but also acknowledging sometimes, and actually all the speakers have talked about this, again, you're going to have to do it yourself, whether that's founding a charity or doing outreach or volunteering, because those things can really help with your self-worth and your being, that sometimes the harsh reality of getting a job and having to be paid can be a bit tough. And the passion, whether that comes through your working day or other things that you do is absolutely vital with that. So it means once you're doing the budgets or dealing with a roof problem or all those other things, you know that it's worth it in the end because you know what that goal is and that objective. And I think, as everybody's shown tonight, like, it is infectious. Passion is absolutely infectious. And you go, I'm interested about that, or it's great to see how that is. And I think that's something to really keep hold of.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Simon. Denola, I'll throw it to you as well. Again, I could clearly sense from when you were talking to us from Geneva, you've got that passion for your career path, all the things that you've navigated. So I'd love to hear some more from you on that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really agree with what Simon said. For me, I think passion is a great compass, right? So it's not the be all and end all, it's just an indicator. So, you know, I had this passion in me. I didn't really know exactly where it was going to go or what it meant. I don't know anyone in my life that's ever worked in the UN or done the things I've done in my life. So it's not like I had a role model or anything. I just knew I had this passion in me. But that passion could not, you know, manifest without preparation, curiosity, hard work, right? So it's a good compass. It's not anything more than that. But it's great to have the passion because it gives you and sort of indication of the path to take. But to take that path, you actually need, I just wrote down preparation, curiosity, and hard work. And I want to just give one example. So I first couldn't believe in my life I would get a job in investment banking. Like my first job out of uni, I was earning like 3 times what my mom was making as a teacher. And I was able to change the circumstances of my family so much. So I could have just stopped there. Like if I just carried on in my job at Morgan Stanley, and I would have already done beyond my wildest dreams of my whole generation, and I would already be fine. But that day when I got home from work, like 3 months in, like I was comfortable with the job and I was like, what next? Like I feel empty. I don't do any of the, impactful passion stuff that I used to do at uni. What did I do? I opened my laptop, went on Google Schmoogle. I started to organize to just search, okay, let me just search Commonwealth, UN, like these big things that I think are interested. That's when I found out there was something called Commonwealth Youth, and that was when I found out this thing existed, started emailing them, and that's how I got these things, Some people may hear this and then think, oh, you just had all these things handed to you, but actually it was through research, a lot of research, curiosity, hard work. I don't know if you've lost me. I think my connectivity is not connecting. Can you hear me still?
Yes, thank you, Denola. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Okay. We'll come back to you for the challenges section later on, when you can talk about technology as well. But actually, again, that concept of passion can't manifest without the curiosity and the hard work. Like again, some of my students, they're like, oh, sir, I really want to be like a tech entrepreneur. I want to be a footballer or an actor. But I'm like, what are you doing about it? You can't just sit and pray. You've got to actually do something about it. So passion can't manifest without hard work. So we're now going to move on to impact and innovation, and looking at how actually passion can lead to making a difference in your field or community. So I'm going to start here with you, Sandra. So,
sure.
Yeah, so it's sort of like, passion leading to a difference in your field and community.
Great, thank you. So I'll share an example of impact, and when you sort of start to act on your passion and you start to build a structure, because it's very important that you do have a structure and a framework, and you have reference points, and you have an idea of what good looks like, and you test that with people as well. So it's not all just in your head, because sometimes it might not be the same reality for you as others. But for my kind of area of work in sustainability, the impact we look for is to see a tangible impact on perhaps environmental performance, which can be tricky to measure sometimes. And sometimes it can be very easy to measure. It depends on which metric you're measuring. But a more intangible one perhaps could be your impact on the community and society, which is as important, because it is about your impact on nature, your impact on the community, and your impact on the economy. These three are intertwined. If a business is not able to survive financially, there's no point trying to talk to them about becoming sustainable. They're about to go bankrupt. And therefore they have to care for the people there and how they wind that business down responsibly. So from an impact point of view, I always like to think that when we are making, for example, purchasing decisions, we look at sourcing things locally. Or when we are employing, we look to employ locally and to enhance and support the economy locally. That generates a lot of good feeling, but it's also about engaging with the community so that people understand their own impact, the decisions that they make every day, how they make an impact. And then sometimes trying to measure that can be tricky because you're talking about how people feel or you're talking about how people's perception changes. And it trickles through eventually in other, for example, environmental impacts. So if somebody understands their impact of buying too much and being wasteful, waste is a terrible thing. And it's something that we have been so privileged to waste a lot in our lives that we don't even, dare I say, feel responsible about it. I think there's more awareness now, but one of the biggest areas of impact for me is around how we measure things and how we affect the community so that the community becomes part of the solution with business.
Thank you. I love the idea. Ultimately, we do want to try and make an impact, and if you can try and measure that, it can be like a virtuous cycle. Thank you, Sandra. So, Pallavi, I'm going to get across to you to answer that as well about passion leading to a difference in your field.
I would say the kind of work what I'm doing right now is directly impacting patient care by leveraging AI to solve critical challenges in healthcare. Specifically, it is retinal healthcare. So when I talk about like how it is helping, so I would give an example of a recent drug which has been approved by FDA. It's called pegcetacoplan, and it doesn't cure right now, but what it does is it reduces the progression of a disease called geographic atrophy, which I mentioned earlier in my introduction. So what it does, now I see that at least even there is no cure, we have something which can reduce the progression over 3 years or even like more than 6 years. We can give patients, we can give people a little bit more time to see this beautiful world with their beautiful eyes. That's what actually we are trying to do here with this passion of AI, and I am a part of this in a direct way, which makes me feel proud also that I have got all these skills from Royal Holloway. This is which I think makes you all proud as well, because I'm a student of Royal Holloway. So yeah, in the end, like the passion of AI and being a student at Royal Holloway has impacted patient care in a direct way. Yes. So this is one of the examples I would say, and I'm very happy that I'm a part of it. And other than that, what I would say is it doesn't only cure, it speeds up the diagnosis process in my other project, which I work in. So if we know that we have done some analysis, I'm talking about technology here because that's what I do all the time. I use machine learning, I use deep learning, I sit in my system all the time. So we use different algorithms to see, like that's what my passion is right now. So we run different algorithms and then we see how it is impacting a patient or patient's eye. And then from where it has got that gene, where it has inherited that gene from, and then we go back to that point where it has been tracked from, go back there to that patient and see, okay, why it was affected. We do all this post analysis and then come back to the real patient, and then we tell them, okay, so this was the problem, and now we will start our care treatment with you. So this is, I think this is kind of direct impact on the patient care, and I'm happy. Yes. So yeah, that's my story.
Thank you, Pallavi, and we're definitely proud of you as Royal Holloway alumni, as we are with the rest of the panel. So with my story with impact and innovation, so after I started my job at Lehman Brothers as a trader, and I was thinking back to my career, and I thought actually, because I'd seen the difference between my state school, although it was a good state school, and independent schools, I thought actually one of the big issues in the UK is about social inequality, and especially in terms of back in the sort of early 2010s, access to good information for students for applying to university. So Monday to Fridays I would work at Lehman Brothers, but weekends with a couple of friends from university, I set up a social enterprise that supported students applying to university. And again, I thought, okay, you can be a charity, in which case you need to sort of apply for funds and donations. But then your concept, Sandra, about how can you survive independently financially. So I thought, actually, I want to be a surplus contributor to the education sector. So we actually provided fee-paying services that students that could afford to would pay for. So they'd pay for like interview preparation, admission test preparation, but all the funds we'd transfer and support to students that couldn't afford. So for 10, 15 years, we supported thousands of students and donated any excess profit, which I wish I'd kept some of it, but we donated $1 million to various educational causes. But I saw that we were making a tangible impact every weekend on the lives of young people. And again, when I changed careers to become a teacher, I knew actually, because I'd done something before. I remember even Denola was talking about when she had done that work at Royal Holloway, doing lots of communities support. I think you do things and then later on sort of plants an idea. Actually, that is a field I want to get involved in. So we're now going to move on to the last question to the panel before we open up for a quick bit of Q&A. So this is about any sort of challenges or lessons learned along the way. So we'll go in the same order. I'll pick Simon first. Any challenges or lessons?
I think I'm going to out myself as a hypocrite who keeps saying do it yourself. But remember that other people want to come on that journey with you. And I think there are certain times when you're wanting to make change or enact change or be that change. Sometimes it's difficult because everything is pushing against you in that other way. But slowly there will definitely be, and I think social media is a challenge these days, but also a great democratizer of information and communication. You can find your people in a way that, 20 years ago is much more difficult to do. So I would say that there are challenges, but you're never alone. Seek those people. And I suppose just reflecting on the conversation that's just been had, never underestimate the power of a single conversation or action, because that could be the one thing that incites somebody else's passion or changes how they think about themselves, about you, or the world. And the challenge that you have might inspire them to change more.
Thank you very much, Simon. I'll now ask Denola, can you share one of your challenges or lessons that you've learned?
Thank you so much. I think one of the key things for me was just to remind everyone, including myself, that of the power of imposter syndrome from stopping you from giving back. Because I think, especially for me, growing up in pretty disadvantaged situation, you always just think people have better than you, and you can see it is the case in a lot of times, but you're always better off than someone else, which means you can always give back to someone. So even while I was at uni, I was able to give back by being an ESOL volunteer for refugees and asylum seekers in Oxford. I think they still do it. The student union still do it. You can sign up and you can go once a week or whenever you have time. So you can always give back at any point. And sometimes you don't realize when you talk about imposter syndrome, you think about it in terms of career, I'm just, whatever reason I'm not qualified to be here. But also we don't think about it in the context of being able to give back, because sometimes thinking that you're less than can stop you from actually seeing yourself as someone in a position to have something to actually offer to somebody. So just to remind everyone that you always have something that you can give back to someone, no matter how small or insignificant you think it is. And finally, just trying to be kind in every situation. I applied for a job in internships in investment banking while I was at uni. I never even got past stage 1, and I was able to get my first role in Morgan Stanley because someone remembered me from a networking event of just being kind to them, and they recommended me for a job I didn't even know. And I'll just kind of say right now, all the jobs I mentioned I've done in Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, the UN, in the think tank in Finland, I did not apply for any of them. So character, being able to network, being kind to people, it could get you into doors that, of course, then you work hard and show yourself. But being kind to people and also remembering that you always have something to give, being at the right place at the right time, those things also go a long way.
Thank you, Denola. I always tell my students, if you can be anything in this world, be kind. So thank you for reiterating that. Sandra.
Thank you, Bobby. Well, what I'm going to say is probably completely different from what my fellow speakers have said, which is I think it's important to be kind, and it's very important to have those conversations, never underestimate their power. But I'm going to say when you're facing corporates as a small, medium business, be tough. And my advice is to always, always negotiate, and negotiate hard, because your survival as a business depends on how skillful you are in negotiation and budgeting and managing your finances. People think, oh, you work in sustainability, you know all about sustainability. It's like, no, I have to be IT, I have to be security, I have to be the negotiator, I have to be procurement, I have to be HR. So those are very important skills, but your number one skill in this life to enable your future to prosper is to negotiate with your line manager. When you get a job, when you get anything, always negotiate. So I've taken it the other way.
No, it's true. It's like it can feel scary wanting to negotiate, but if you don't, people might walk over you. And it's important
no, you don't want to.
No, you don't want at all. Pallavi, can you share a challenge or lesson with us?
I would share the lesson first. Like one of the most important lessons which I have learned is whatever you study or experience in your life is never wasted. It never goes wasted, even if it's a small thing. So throughout my education, whether it was during my BTech, MTech or PhD, even like when I'm at my job, when I did part-time teaching at Royal Holloway also, whether it was technical or otherwise while dealing with people, it has been valuable in some way in my current job. And also where I am in my life right now. Sometimes you may not see the immediate relevance of something, what you're learning, but eventually it all comes together. So my advice would be to never think you're wasting your time on anything which you're learning. When you're learning something new, it will definitely help you at some point in your journey, whether it's a small thing or it's a big thing. It will definitely make a big impact on your life, on your life stage, yeah. And the challenge, in my journey, I think it was because I'm working with clinicians, so that was a major challenge that was a major challenge in itself, because I didn't understand what terminologies they are using, even if I'm working on the same things. For example, if it is a retinal scan image, it's just a small, I don't know, for me it is just an image, but they are calling it fundus, and I never heard about that word before. So this was very difficult for me to understand and just go, because it will also save time if I already know the terminology. I don't have to ask them, oh, what do you mean by the registration? Because for me, registration is completely different from what registration they are talking about. They want the overlapping of two images, but for me that registration is just you just register something on laptop or on your algorithm. That's what it is. So that was very challenging, and there was a lot of things to learn at the beginning, but I think I am continuously learning, and it's a good thing. I have as we defined passion earlier, that it's continuous learning is perseverance and your curiosity and everything helps you to go through all these challenges, and you never give up. That's the thing. You never give up on whatever life throws on you. You will definitely go through all these phases, and you will come up with flying colors. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
So, and we have so many examples here now.
Thank you, Pallavi. So my challenge or my lesson learned is, so again, my sort of day job, or it's part-time now, as a teacher, you always want to give your best. You want that perfect lesson where everyone's engaged all the time, and if somebody came and they go, oh, Mr. Seagull, what an incredible lesson. And that's your aim, but the reality is that's not always possible, because you might have slept badly the night before, you might have there's no milk left when you're looking for breakfast, and you have a bad morning, or for example your PowerPoint doesn't work. And I always tell myself and my students and people I mentor, sometimes it's okay just to be okay. We don't always have to be tip-top, 100% incredible. Obviously that's our aim, but sometimes it's okay just to be okay. And I've learned to be kind to myself in that way. So that's my sort of lesson to myself. So I want to say a big thank you to our panel. You've been really incredible. Again, I think you really epitomized together, the values of being respectful, daring, open, and innovative. And I can imagine, if there are any TikTokers in the room, I can imagine these being memes. You've got to make them on TikTok. What would respectful look like on campus? What would daring look like? What would being open look like? What would innovative look like? So thank you so much. But we're going to now, quickly, a round of applause to the panel, all of you. Any questions? Can't be quiz questions though. Any questions? No questions. Otherwise, I will ask one quick word. If you could go back to so it's got to be in one sentence. If you could go back to yourself on your very first day of Royal Holloway, what would you tell yourself? So I'll start with you, Simon.
Ooh,
one sentence, everyone.
That football match you didn't think you wanted to be part of isn't as scary as it was.
Thank you.
Throw yourself into something you've never done.
Thank you. Denola, in one sentence, what one thing would you tell yourself on your very first day at Royal Holloway?
You deserve to be here just like everyone else.
Love that. Thank you. Sandra?
I would say to myself, remember there's the clock change, and so you don't miss the 1 hour of your lecture.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much to our wonderful panel, and thank you all for being here. It doesn't end just now. You can come downstairs to the atrium for some drinks and chat and conversation. But thank you all very much for joining us this evening.
Get to share her sentence.
Oh my God, sorry. As a teacher, that's terrible. I beg your pardon. Pallavi, final word to you then.
Okay, don't think too much, you got it. That's what I think I said to myself.
Thank you, Pallavi. Thank you very much.